where I'm at. I'm actually out here in the garden. I had a little baby deer right where I'm at here about 5 minutes before we went called
Sounds
you.
good.
I was trying to get a okay, good, yeah.
Yep. Go for it, guys.
All
All
right,
right.
let's do it. It's good morning, everyone. It's V the Gorilla, the one and only Thriller from Manila. And we're here this morning with W. We got a lot of things going on, especially with the Iranian situation, the Middle East, and we wanted to fill in everybody on what is happening on the U.S. side of things. Looking at it from an international scope, what are the movers, what are the shakers, who's shaking, who's baking, who's faking. With that being said, check us out at roguemoney.net. Follow us on Twitter at the Rogue Money, and check out our sponsors, thecryptoschool.io, thecryptoschool.io. Take advantage, no matter what the market is, learn how to make money. Thecryptoschool.io. With that being said, W, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, bro, what's going on? I'm good here.
Lack of sleep, the typical usual stuff with me. I'm still trying to get my bearings. It's a beautiful day in New York, thank God.
Well, even if you get them, it's the Chevrolet bearings. What are you going to do with them?
Exactly
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. Get a Ford, you won't need new bearings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I of course here, I have my boats and like that, and so today is the big day. I launched it yesterday and ran around and had lots of fun, and then today we're taking it out to one of the islands and going to park it there for the season, and so I'm busy, you know, like you were, with personal things, but still very interested in what's going on in the country and the world, and this amazing moment that we're all living in. This, decades from now, after the dust is settled and kids and grandkids are running around, uh, we will be talking about this like I remember the experiences we went through going from the Carter era to the Reagan era. And this is an amazing moment, and you don't want to let it be lost on yourself and miss it. For all the headlines and everything else, this is an amazing moment in the country as we take on these monsters that have been building and living in here in every area, politically, financially, criminally,
Yeah.
as long as I've been alive. And I'm just astonished at what's taken place so far and the progress being made.
Yeah. No, same here. It's I'm just floored when he flew in with those three Korean hostages, and it was amazing yesterday. And I was driving through to an appointment in New York, having Air Force One directly fly overhead, right over my car's roof, was incredible. This was at like 12 in the afternoon. Yesterday, I have the video of it. I'll send it to you. It was amazing, man. Then hell, I pulled over as it was doing a few touch and goes. It was simply amazing. I just videotaped the whole entire thing.
Yeah.
For the first time in a long time, man, looking at that plane coming in, I was fuck. Excuse my language, but I was freaking proud.
Yeah.
I was freaking proud. I was because 8 years, every time I see that bird or anything, I was like, I knew the bastard was in there. So the first time in a long time, my man, I was brimming ear to ear.
Well, I will say this. Even during the Clinton era, and when things I felt were very, very dark, uh, even though a lot of people may have not felt quite so bad or whatever, it was very personal for me, and I felt that we had a criminal in office very strongly at that time. I never bothered me. It wasn't like it's not our country or my country anymore or my president or whatever. Um, that was never the emotion that it struck with me. It was still fresh with me. The difference between Carter and Reagan, and the way that Reagan functioned, and that somebody was in the office didn't necessarily have anything to do with the office. Um, somebody that I didn't like, it still I had respect for the country, and was glad that I'm an American, that sort of thing. So And you know, I was very happy that Trump won. Obviously, I
Hmm.
wasn't somebody who had, from our conversations, I didn't think there was any other candidate to vote for.
Yeah.
But I was very um, circumspect. I was cautious about whether or not he would be able to do the things that he had to do to truly get these problems in the country under control.
Yeah.
Um, because the deep state's just so deep. If you underestimate it, you're lost. Reagan, I don't think it's so much that he underestimated it, but he tried to work with the players. So, for example, um, the CIA was every bit in as much control, and the deep state players behind the scenes as they are really up until a year and a half ago, and that those threats were still very real, live, present, whatever. Um, Reagan was working with these people. Casey got in there. Uh, there was a accommodation to try and manage the problem. And the reality is, um, the problem still continued. You had Iran Contra. You had the uh, drug running coming into the country. The players getting stronger. You had the graft on the defense contracts, and there was some freeing up with the economy, but most of that was due to the fact that we increased the defense spending, and all of the defense contractors were hiring like crazy, and that allowed us to reinflate the economy.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, and we didn't get our tax cuts and things that Reagan was promised, and of course, the assassination attempt fortunately didn't succeed. And I think there's more and more evidence coming to the fore that that was an attempt at a coup by the Bush people. So we jump forward to today, and uh, I was just concerned that even with good advisors around him, Trump would just not be up for the level of the game that he was going to get hit with,
Hmm.
and the people advising him around him. And the reality is, he has done a fantastic job. The people around him appear to me to have been very efficient in their calculations and uh, timing in order to begin dismantling these deep state actors. That said, I still had my concerns personally that um, the people behind the scenes would find a way, if they didn't already have it before he became president, to pull the puppet strings and rein him in, and we'd get all excited and drop our guard and give him support, and then have the ball pulled away, at the last second again, and part of this Hegelian dialectic to get us, as far to the right as possible to switch the country from all the way left all the way right, and trap us in another um, round of this deep state machinations. Several things that happened, especially a very specific thing that happened about a week and a half ago, sealed the deal for me that he was going after certain of those actors that I considered the worst of the worst. And um, I, I think that at this point, if this is a well managed, orchestrated, puppeteers act. Uh, they've got me because, as far as I'm concerned, at this point in time, based on things that have been happening, um, there's a certain point uh, where you have to commit, and there's no half games or half measures. And we have a saying that if you hesitate, you're lost. Uh, uh, and so there's a moment where either it's go or no go. There's no in between. You got to commit fully, totally, absolutely. Um, and for me, that has occurred now. And any reservations I had about, is there something going on with Trump that he's going to screw it up at the last second, or not just Trump himself, because I've always felt he was genuine, but the people around him that could be steered off and stuff. I've kind of passed that at this point in time. As far as I'm all in, as far as I'm concerned, I'm in 100%. I'm going to support him completely. I mean, he says jump, I'm going to jump type of thing. I'm very comfortable at this point that they've got a shot at really taking down some very evil players that have been running us and running the country for a very long time, and that they have made the commitment to go for the gold and take them out for real. Even the stuff like the Federal Reserve and stuff like that. So I'm pretty comfortable at this point in time that I'm dropping my guard and I'm going all in.
That's huge, man.
Well, I mean, it is for me. I mean, I don't know how other people feel, but I
No, I
mean,
mean, if it's huge for you, it's honestly, if you feel that strongly about it, if it's huge for you, then that's going to be huge for me as well.
Well, let me just say this. Let's dissect it a little bit more before anybody thinks I've just drunk the Kool-Aid. I've gone off my rocker completely. The things that I'm using in part for making this emotional mental leap. And let me just add this. I have made this known amongst my peers. A lot of people that have been questioning and maybe wondered where I was at. That may have thought I was all in for Trump, but I've said it, lots and lots of times, all the way before the election. From my conversations with you, even with your listeners, that I had concerns and wasn't really, I was hedging my statements and attitude all the way along, just because I saw what happened with Reagan and subsequent to that, and that we didn't get the country back, if you will.
Right.
But so one of the things that's huge to me is on the energy side. Trump has done stuff last year that are just starting to really kick in now, and I think we'll really start feeling it sometime next year and the year after. And that's freeing up the oil drilling, taking the restraints off, while at the same time turning loose the dogs over at EPA. And what that's going to do is it's going to free up our ability to get oil here domestically, not the expensive stuff that you got to go frack and tear the country to smithereens over, and that I actually am not very comfortable with. The fracking, I think, is more serious than a lot of conservatives want to acknowledge.
Oh, absolutely. It destroys water tables.
Yes, and there's just lots of things there that are not. If you're not paying attention on the science side, or if you're just blowing it off, then you're not being an honest player. But there's lots of oil that we can get with no drama, and those areas have been closed off to us and cheap. Our production costs in a lot of these areas are very low compared to the rest of the world for good quality oil.
Right.
And so he has loosened those reins. He included the offshore stuff in that. And, however you feel about any of that, at the end of the day, they're still going to be regulating the crap out of that stuff and being very cautious. It's not like he's just throwing caution to the wind here, but he's made it possible to go get that stuff that has been done elsewhere. If you lower your energy costs, and if you do it domestically, and you create jobs, and you're running the money in here locally, you're not shipping the money off to anti-American terrorist groups all over the world. And you're creating a context where you can run your country. People can afford to go to their kids' soccer game and transportation, stuff like that. I can drive my hot rods and boats and airplanes. Then it changes things in fundamental ways. And it's not that the price of fuel is going to go down to $1 a gallon or something like that, but what money is being generated is generating here locally, and it's creating jobs here in the country, and it's not exporting that to some other place that's not, interested in working with or helping us. It's going to strengthen our currency. And, we've had an oil-backed dollar for a long time. The problem is it's Saudi oil backed. And, that's another counterpoint to this whole thing. At the same time that he's freeing up our domestic production, one of the other CIA deep state strongholds where they were getting their money from is Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is under an intense internal reset. I said it here in your show years ago, both privately to you and then to your listeners at different times. And I had been saying it since the late 90s, but during Gulf War I, the Saudis had been trying to show the world how they could, push oil prices around right in the middle of the whole war. And so they pumped their wells super hard, and then to get extra production out of them at critical time, with the advice of advisors. And I apologize, I got a Coast Guard helicopter going over me right now, so if you hear it, just hang tight. I haven't even got the boat out yet, and they're already looking to write me a speeding ticket. Anyway, lost my train of thought there. With the Saudis, what the deal is that when they set that, they damaged their oil wells, and so their productive capacity is radically downgraded. Those wells are producing extremely low compared to what they were producing previously or capable of producing, and that's put them in a tough position. I think that's the motivation for why they were so adamant about getting into Libya and getting that oil there that they could run back to their own refineries and to other places there in the Mideast, and then continue to send the oil product out to the world, and then cover the fact that their own wells domestically were damaged. Trump's actions with the production here at home is going to fill that gap that was there from the Saudis, without allowing that production to be shifted to other countries that are a problem for us. So that's kind of a big deal there. And then the money going to CIA deep state players. When Trump came in office, one of the things we talked about recently with an interview I did with you earlier this year, what did Trump go after right out of the chute? He went after ISIS, which was a CIA Mossad construct, reinvented Al Qaeda, or reinvented last terrorist group.
W, let me ask you a question. We all know how the Russians were very instrumental in taking ISIS apart. The only thing that I got out of anything with the U.S. is either A, they're just mucking things up, B, they're supporting ISIS, C, they're logistically moving out of the way so ISIS can escape to certain areas. And then D, I hear small talks about that they are working with the Russians in the background to help kill ISIS. What is the actual truth in the U.S. involvement with ISIS? Because that is such a muddled, twisted ball of yarn.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I think
What have you heard?
Well, Trump has essentially uh, we've maintained a position in Syria, and we're not backing out of Syria completely, even though at least not quickly. We don't want to create a vacuum where we mucked things up already, and we're going to protect the Kurds. Um, uh, Trump may not have gone in and just started blasting ISIS positions or changing the plan day one that he came into office, which a lot of people would have liked to have seen. It was cover for things that were being done. I think he did kind of the right thing, the way they went about it, and worked with the Russians. These are groups that we backed. We had to get some of them out of there because they weren't, they were playing the game that, our deep state wanted them to play. We were giving them room to change their attitude and get out of the way, and a lot of them back to Jordan and out of the way. Uh, but the ones that didn't want to are toast. There is a change in policy related to the way we're functioning, and we're not backing a lot of the groups that we were backing. CIA's best enemy money can buy that kept the military machine going and then protected our friends who were really the money supply to this deep state. So North Korea, Iran, one of the things with the Iran deal that people aren't really paying attention to, and we've talked about it privately, and we've talked about it, I believe, here in the show, is that Obama's and Clinton's were working with players in Iran on several fronts and behind the scenes. So all this time we're talking anti-Iran this, and we're not, doing nice with Iran there, and then we find out behind the scenes they're sending them billions and giving them help on the nuclear stuff, just like it was deep state players that were helping North Korea with their nuclear stuff, and with their missiles technology, and with their computer technology. So, whose team are these people really on? What's going to come out in the weeks and months ahead is that Hillary Clinton specifically, but the Clinton Foundation and people close to the Clintons were getting money from the Iranians in exchange for engineering a way to get nuclear materials to Iran. And it wasn't tiny amounts of money. And that it appears that a lot of Obama's activity there was similar. The number that I was aware of probably a year ago, all the way into the Trump administration. But while we had heard these numbers of a few $100 million or $1 billion or $2 billion going to Iran and it's helping terror stuff, and that was pretty unsettling. It was pretty annoying. But at the end of the day, $1 billion, what are you gonna do with $1 billion? But the number that disturbed me, because I was hearing it last year, was in the tens of billions of dollars, and that's very disturbing. But it now appears that the amount of money that got to the Iranians wasn't tens of billions of dollars; it was a third of a trillion, 330 or $40 billion, and that was allowed to get there by the Obama administration. If that number is true, and I don't know that it's true, but we'll know a lot more over the next few weeks, that's an astounding number. And why are we having trouble with Iran? Because we were paying them off to help them out to get as advanced as possible. If you give them that kind of money, they're going to be a problem to the world. They're going to do crazy things. And with the presentation that Netanyahu did the other day, I know there's some controversy about what's going on there, but it at the end of the day, if the way the Iranians were getting out of their nuclear agreements was because they were building a processing facility in northern Syria to be protected by Hezbollah that was outside of Iranian territory, that's a pretty amazing stunt, a very disturbing stunt, a very scary stunt, and if they've been able to pull that off and finish that, if we had a Hillary in office right now, they'd be finishing that. And what inspectors, let inspectors go anywhere in Iran? Okay, great. They're not going to find any plant, then whatever. Yeah, because it's in northern Syria. It's a shell game.
The only thing is, I don't, that whole Netanyahu narrative, man. It's all old data, and I really, really don't buy it.
I'm not.
I don't buy it at all.
I'm not in the same mode, and the reason is because I understand. I got that many CDs, sitting in the waste drawer. It's
it's Benjamin Netanyahu and his traveling reality show that he's taking everywhere. Look, I got a couple of CDs and binders, and there's in the most surveilled area in the world, Iran's going to set up a nuclear facility in northern Syria. Man, I don't buy that at all. I think that's horse crap.
Yeah, I actually disagree, and didn't mean that they were going to build a assembly plant necessarily or something more involved. They just needed a place to be able to run the processors. And remember,
but that takes ridiculous amounts of energy.
Yeah.
That takes infrastructure. How are they going to do that in the middle of the northern Syrian desert in a bombed out area where everything around you is all bombed out, shelled out, or hobbled out, with every single intelligence agency on planet Earth looking down your nose? That is not the place you'd want to go.
Well, but you have to remember what was the intention? What was the plan? The plan was that Hillary wins.
Oh yeah, that was the intention of the plan. Right.
Right. And so if Hillary had won, then they would have pulled it off. Hillary didn't win, and they weren't able to.
So the real question becomes who is
because remember, hold on a second.
Who are the ones?
Because remember, who created North Korea? How's North Korea going to do this? They were creating the next North Korea, if you want to put it that way. We sit there and going, how in the freaking world are they building these freaking ballistic missiles and these computer processing systems and being such a threat? And the people in the country are eating great blades of grass that they're cultivating at the side of the road, starving to death. How are they doing that? Because they were getting help, and then they were getting at all the key moments, the people that supposedly are watching and paying attention and blah 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 are in on the scam.
Yeah.
Remember, all of our people, even Eric Schmidt from
Scroogle,
Google Alphabet, was over there freaking helping them with their computer spying stuff. Again, the information may not be current, and it wasn't going to go anywhere now with Trump and his people paying attention. The other side of the coin is that that's not when all of these plans were being made, what was going on. They, there's so much happened that people don't remember the details of. For example, when was Hillary Clinton actually kind of hurt pretty seriously, allegedly, in a plane crash? What plane crash? What are you talking about?
It was in the Middle East, wasn't it?
It was in Syria or in Iraq, and she was headed over for a secret meeting with Iranians.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Now she's walking around with a back brace. What's that? Do you know what that's all about? She's walking around with a back brace now, man. It's like 80 degrees outside. She got an overcoat, a scarf, and a back brace.
Yeah, with her medical problems, she's not very functional. It's been asserted that she's on suicide watch by the Q team.
Well, I mean, she's not getting enough adrenochrome. Is that what it is?
Well, she's
the baby blood supply went out. Say yeah, W.
that the supply has been cut off for, I'm sure, at this point. And I think, it is interesting seeing the decay of the deep state, because they are being cut off from all of their classic, playing and everything else, the stuff that they were up to. I mean, it's got to hurt. They can't have their little secret rituals and games as easily. One of the things happened right there in your neighborhood, though, people probably haven't looked at this, and they probably should, is look at the Met Gala that happened 3-4 nights ago there in at the Metropolitan Theater. They had, if you just go to your search engine and punch in Metropolitan Gala, you'll get this incredible series of images. And so what they did was literally all the Hollywood Satanists, all the actors and actresses and singers and everybody that you kind of know are in this realm, showed up, and it was, the theme was the church. And so they show up in Catholic garb and church garb and, Protestant garb, and they, have a Satanist presentation of that image. And it's pretty shocking. And knowing what we know right now about the mischief going on in Hollywood with the Satanism and the pedophiles going on, and then you see that and you realize these people haven't completely backed down. And one of the things that I'm really intrigued by, I don't know if your listeners are aware of it yet, but they should kind of get up to speed. The Stormy Daniels thing with Trump. We had the Allison Mack, who was arrested.
XVIM, the
right.
And
but
then the attorney general right here in New York, the guy who was completely cock blocking the entire investigation, he resigns because it comes out of all the crap about this guy. He's this serious abuser, this guy.
Well, did you know that Stormy Daniels has an NXIVM tattoo?
Holy shit, really?
Yes.
Stormy I did not realize.
Oh. So now think about that. And remember, what were they doing? They had to get something on everybody that was a member, or they would use their girls that were members to set up judges, attorney generals, power players in industry and politics. They'd set them up, say the girl's underage, or threaten rape, or who knows whatever else, and then they'd get them to do whatever they wanted them to do. So now think about your AG blocking the investigation. Was he actually being set up to do that? Had he been compromised? Because that is this theme that's been going on in the deep state. They get their politicians and judges set up. Now, I'll just leave the reservation for a second. I'm still over the reservation. It's just my feet aren't touching the reservation, but I'm over the reservation. And let me just say this. One of the interesting things, because I follow stuff that's pretty conventional, and then I also follow stuff that's maybe not conventional for a lot of your audience, but an interesting prophetic word from one of the guys that I actually think is the real deal, from several years ago, is that he said that there would be 5. He predicted prophesied a Trump victory. And then he said there was going to be 5 Supreme Court justices that would leave office, that Trump would get to pick the replacements for. One would be by death, and then one would be in some kind of a criminal activity, and then 3 would leave under a cloud, but for similar criminal activity also. And but that would happen, and that the defining moment when the others would have to step down, other than the death, would be after a big volcano eruption. And so what's happening over in Hawaii now?
Big volcano.
Well, and Kilauea has gone off. I mean, shoot, I remember being out there. I was out there with friends that everybody in this audience would know. We were cruising off the coast of Hawaii, off of the Big Island there, when the lava was coming down at night. Huge orange river of lava, the steam coming out of the ocean. It was beautiful. And the next morning, um, uh, we were up in the coffee bar at the upper deck, and the kids were all getting up and running around and all that, but it was early morning for us. And Mike and I were up there having coffee, and the news came over that the Murrah building had been bombed. And so I remember the lava flow being very heavy, and that volcano is going all the time. So I don't know, is that the volcano that may have been referenced? However, I will say that there's some indications this might be different than some of the other eruptions more recently. This could be a bigger one coming. It's just getting started, and this thing kind of continues on. Usually, when Kilauea gets going, it lasts months and months to a year or two, and it gets all fired up. So I don't know that that's the one, but I think that the idea that we could have a bunch of Supreme Court justices having to leave under some cloud, that would have seemed silly a few years ago, even a year ago. But with all the revelations coming out and that are portended to be about to come out under this administration, the stuff that's being revealed to the public,
Yeah.
I think that that's becoming more and more possible. We felt, of course, back when the healthcare thing happened, that there was something on, they had something on the Chief Justice that caused that vote change on his part. Somehow he'd been potentially blackmailed. There's been speculation was over some adoption records or whatever. But whatever it was, the reality is these deep state players have been very coercive and have the goods on people all over the place. That's how they have functioned classically for decades and decades and decades. So it may very well be that there's something there that's about to come out that could change everything. And the term that was passed around when Trump was just coming into office was that he was going to be the disruptive president, etc. Well, good. I mean, it was like it was going to be horrible that he's going to be disruptive. Are you kidding? What's been going on in the country needed to be disrupted because it's been horrible, and the corruption within the system has been just off the charts.
Yeah.
So let me come back to my original thing that I was saying. So what are the things that Trump's doing? He's getting energy available. It'll be produced domestically, and that's going to change the economy. That stabilizes the dollar. Even though there's all sorts of reasons to be concerned about the stability of the dollar, and that's something that's very close to home for me because I know what we did in order to take down the Russian economy, and the dollar was part of it, and oil was part of it. Remember, we brought the price of oil so low, we nearly wiped out Texas in order to break the bank with Russia, to stop oil production in Russia and make it uneconomical for them to go after all this oil that would have given them money in their economy. And so that was part of what we did under Reagan. And then we attacked him on the moral stuff of the church and like that. Then we went after them on the currency, not by counterfeiting currency or anything like that, but by getting them to baiting them into printing a bunch of their currency that didn't go into circulation there. That we bought that currency, stored it outside the country, and then exchanged that currency back into the Soviet economy during the Bush era after Reagan, and literally collapsed the ruble, 40% in a matter of months. They'd have gone to zero if they hadn't have worked a deal with us. And that brought down the wall and broke the bank there in Russia. What I've been concerned about is what was about to happen here at the U.S. with this dollar floating all over the world and then wanting to repatriate itself back home. And had Hillary won, or even Bernie, we'd have been in very dire straits.
Oh, forget about it, man. I would have left. Just
well, I don't
it
know
would
where
have
you
been,
go
a
to.
revolution. I think the military was prepared to go for a coup.
Mm-hmm. But then, if you think about the situation now, if we're moving this oil production up domestically, that is, the country runs on oil, the world runs on oil. That's still what's going to happen. You can have other alternative energy systems, et cetera, that I think are going to come online now, et cetera, but it takes time. The reality is that gives us a certain base to work from domestically and a certain stability that we need. And then you start looking out at the rest of the stuff. He's going at weeding out the corruption in the political realm, Democrat and Republican.
Right.
McCain has said he's not running again. He may, in fact, be in his last hours right now.
Yeah.
Hillary's not there, and all of those corrupt people that were around Hillary, the baby-eating Podestas, the Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the child trafficking crews, and just all of the smirky ilk around them that, were corrupting our system, undermining it with Uranium One and all the other things. The foundation and the slush fund of money to the world's leaders, to other countries, they felt they had to play ball with these people if they wanted to survive, and because they were the mob. One of the things that I said back during the McCain-Obama election cycles, I said, what do you want, the New York mob or the Chicago mob? You're going to get one or the other.
Right.
Same thing with the Hillary thing. What are you going to get? The New York mob, the Chicago mob. These mobs were, owned the political realm. That is being shut down, and the Clinton Foundation is no more as far as taking in money and everything else. Australia is looking at, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars of Australian government money that went to the Clinton Foundation under complete fraud. And so they had this money to, corrupt officials, to, cook the books.
Yeah.
And that stopped. And so even to the rest of the world, we don't have this image of, all of our officials being on the take and then helping other officials in those countries who are on the take, etc. That's a good thing. It's going to, over time, make for a more level playing field for us and countries we do business with, where they don't feel like they're getting arm twisted by the mob on every deal. And then you look at the production. If you're moving stuff home, one of the important things about production domestically, people blow off the jobs. It's not that much money. It's not high tech and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that those production level jobs, people that do research and development do it where the factories are. So you can upgrade quickly and you can see how the product's working. I remember being over at Ford with Peterson and going through the assembly line, and a half a dozen VPs there with us going down through the assembly line when they were building the new Mustang back in the uh, what was the 50th anniversary of the Mustang? It was in 89, 90, right in there, 89.
Mm-hmm.
And um, uh, they had all the parts while they were still producing the tail end of that series that was in production then. They had all the parts for the next generation of Mustang that they were producing right there at the assembly line, and they were doing integration studies with chassis and all that. And so they had literally hundreds of parts that engineers were coming over from one of the other facilities and
Right.
looking at as the assembly line was working and talking with assembly line workers about how bolts were, positioned compared to other stuff so that they could integrate the new style into aspects of the old style, in this upgraded version, this new chassis version. Having access to your production is critical. So that was the research and development arm. Um, uh, and so having a factory in a country on the other side of the world, the research and development follows that. That is the high paying jobs.
Right.
And that is the more technical stuff. So just sending the low cost production stuff is really not a full understanding of what's at stake when you do that. And those innovators, that's what creates the next new generation of ideas and products, etc. Making it domestic and then not bringing in people from foreign countries to do that R&D and having it done by Americans at home, that's going to have an impact, and it won't be in one day, but you wake up 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now and you'll really begin to see and feel it. um, so uh, those types of things tell me that we are on a path to some kind of a financial boom that we have not seen in our lifetime. Uh,
Yeah.
my reading of the tea leaves at this exact moment in time is that Trump is doing the things that really will create a boom cycle here in the country that will be off the charts. Now, we've been self programmed and we have been programmed by these monsters to believe that with a predictive type of programming, uh, an MK Ultra type programming as a country, as a society, as a people, we have been programmed to believe, accept, anticipate this nightmarish doom and gloom, America as a prison state, um, inevitability, and to accept that.
Right.
And so that has been in this community, in this alternative media community, and it's very pervasive. It's very hard to break that kind of predictive programming.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I was concerned about was a Hegelian dialectic being played against us, where the country was going so far left that in the Hegelian dialectic you switch it and go all the way to the opposite, and then there's some resolution down the road, and that this Trump push and this hard shift to the right and remilitarization of the country was part of that Hegelian dialectic. I think that was the intent of people that were in the wings of the Trump campaign, and it was an option that they were going to exercise and were exercising related to this Trump administration. But I think, especially with things that happened last year, and then
Yeah.
especially over the last few weeks, that as I mentioned, I'm convinced that Trump has broken the puppet strings that some people may have thought was there, and that those people may have thought they had over Trump as this ace in the hole, and that Trump has now bit that hand too. And so, with that in mind, if Trump can uh, get the energy on track, get the jobs back home, which we see in the jobs numbers every day, uh, get the corrupt political system and judicial system reined in, we are well on our way to a phenomenal uh, uh, spurt in the economy. If the Rogue listeners miss this moment, they will miss one of the greatest economic turnarounds ever was. That doesn't mean there's not drama ahead. That doesn't mean there's not scary stuff still out there looming that is going to be a problem. But the fundamentals are getting in place that allow you to overcome any of those things and to work through them and work around them. And I believe at this point in time that we're about to see something that none of us necessarily could have hoped to believe was going to be true, but is true. And this, let's put it this way: I stepped aside from wanting to use my life energy, running a large group of people in a corporate situation. I just didn't want to fight the tax issues and the regulation issues and everything like that. Wanted to enjoy life and just didn't see the benefit of burning myself up to, do that. I've done it and didn't want to do it again. But I see an opportunity reemerging that I actually would consider stuff I was going to do offshore, doing it right here at home and re-engaging and going all in, because it's fun to do business. It's fun to do something very productive.
Absolutely.
But when you're under this oppressive environment, this almost Soviet-style environment as a country, it just burns you up. I think that I see the rays of light at the end of the hall for something amazing that's about to happen. And I would ask all of your listeners to take a deep breath and do a recalculation and consider coming out of your bomb shelters and underground bunkers.
And put the cat food down. Put down the cat food.
Put the cat food down, exactly. Because I think that there is this dawn in America. We're going to hear a lot of horrible, horrible, horrible stuff through the remainder of this year, and very dark stuff about things that have been happening here in the country behind the scenes, in the political and financial world, that are going to be very troubling. And the only thing I would say is that all of this coming to light is still a healthy thing. And the reality is, by the time that most people in the country realize that everything changed, it will already be 30% of the way down the road. Let's not be behind the curve. Let's be ahead of the curve. I'm telling you to get ahead of the curve right now and reconsider where you're at, what you're doing, and how do you, at a personal level, participate in, get your piece of the play that's about to come, this reemergence of America. I think you're going to see a lot of, because one of the things I want to mention too, everybody's been looking at offshore because things were so dark and oppressive and everything here. And so you had to pick an escape route, a place where you could still function if you were going to do it. I certainly have a plan and in place for where I was going to go ahead and move, because of what I saw coming here in the country. At this point in time, that's completely shelved for me, and I'm not really too concerned about that, because I think that the only place to be for the next 10 years is going to be right here. Even if, because we're these other countries that have been benefiting because corrupt people in our government and corrupt people in our business world who were being corrupted by the way the laws were formed, tax law, and EPA laws and things like that. It was forcing them, baiting them to go outside the country to other places that these players could then control. I mean, that's what Clinton Foundation is about. That's what the Obama Foundation was going to do. Without the aid, without the benefit of that corrupt activity pushing inventors and producers offshore and out of the country, those countries aren't going to do as well. I think the world's going to be beating a path to our door here in the U.S. as things start to stabilize here and take a new tone. It doesn't mean there's not going to be drama and there's not going to be concerns and that anything you do is going to work. But a lot of what we do here is going to work and work better than it has in a very long time. So
let me ask you this, because we're pressed for time. What about the debt situation we have here? What about Wall Street? What about, I mean, this stuff either has to, we got to go through maybe a restructuring. Maybe we got to go through a global economic reset. We maybe, some sort of devaluation. The economic system in its current stage it's literally bursting at the seams at this point, and the only thing holding it together is the electronic duct tape. That's it.
But as soon as you change the equation on your own domestic production, it's amazing how quickly you can get those things under control. It's all a shell game trick anyway. And so Trump, one thing he hasn't done is he hasn't blown up the system in the finances and in the way that government functions. He's eliminated problem children players. He's going after laws that are screwed up, things that happen with executive orders, etc. But he's not jumping to something extreme instantaneously. So they're going to have to continue to play the game somewhat normally, but that's so that we survive as people and individuals, and begin to move us to a place where deeper, more fundamental changes can happen, say at the Federal Reserve and things like that. Again, we have the ability to pull ourselves out of this hole, including behind the scenes threatening other governments and groups, that we could do things, that nobody guessed, whether it's releasing other technologies that we have in the background that we could start sifting in faster if we had to, or other reserves, be it actual metals reserves or even technologies, crypto technologies, because remember, who runs the best computer systems on the planet? It's the same argument that you and I have had personally with the Russians and their military technology versus us. The reality is, while they have some really cool, neat stuff that is pretty advanced, and it's not just one or two things, it's quite a few things, on the depth, we clean their clock. We are the big dog. We haven't been able to do it. The analogy that applies here, there was this great 50s movie where the jet crashed, a couple of them, and they couldn't figure out what went wrong. And at the end of the day, they're up trying to reinvent what happened, and they had one stewardess that survived. And so she's duplicating every last thing that they did before the jet crash. One of the things is that the pilot had asked for some coffee, and she brings him in the coffee. Where did he put it? He said it right here. The jet jostles, and the coffee spilled, and they're going on. And the gal had said, "Oh, shoot, that same thing happened with Captain So-and-so before their thing did." 5 minutes later, they have an engine problem, and he has to shut the engine down. Then a minute or two later, they got another engine problem. That engine shut down, and now the engines are all going toast. And this pilot realizes, wait a second, we got coffee here. We just shorted some circuits. We're going off lights. Those engines aren't bad. The engines are good. we have good engines on this plane. We just got false indicators. And so here they're headed for another crash while they're doing a simulation or a reenactment. And the reality is that they figured out what actually happened. In our country, with the EPA laws, with moving production and energy production, especially offshore, we had disabled ourselves. We had choked ourselves off from our own resources by realizing that it's still right here. The wealth is still right here. The diamonds are in our own backyards. And by loosing ourselves to go after those diamonds, we can be great again. We can be on track again. We can start to pull ourselves out of this dive. And because the things that stopped us from working right were all artificial. They were artificially imposed by crooks, by scammers, by people that baited us into cutting ourselves off from our own resources while they open up the same resources somewhere else at a distance so they can make money off the slave labor pulling the coal out of the ground somewhere else or doing other things. And so Trump is reversing a lot of that stuff, allowing us to, be unchained here domestically to go do what we've classically done for ourselves all along. I think that that is going to bring us into a new productivity and a new prosperity that we haven't seen in a very long time, and make the world come to us. And if things go wrong somewhere down the road, if the deep state reemerges, which I think they will, they'll reorganize. They're not going away completely, and they've got resources available to them. We'll be re-engaging again once they've done a reset. The reality is that we'll be in a much stronger position, and we'll still be the only game in town, because the people that are going to move into positions of authority and power in the business world, in the political world, are going to have a fresh set of eyes and are going to be very wary to go down that road again. Once burned, twice shy. I think there's a lot of reason to have hope, and it's not baseless, that America is on a path, the American people are on a path for something that's once in hundreds of years, not once in a generation, with the things that we can do here in the country. And of course, I have my interests in space stuff that I've put together for decades now. And I would not have tried to do it under a Clinton administration or prior administrations here domestically, but I'm very encouraged to pursue that here now. And that's because of this environment that I believe is just around the corner. Yeah. Don't miss it. Don't miss it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I agree with you with a few takeaways. I think, I've said this before. If Trump is able to neuter the deep state and take them out, we're going to have at least another, 6 or 7 years of incredible prosperity. I think it's going to be an economic boom. I think a physical economy can be built up very rapidly and very quickly, which will cushion the blow significantly cushion the blow of any sort of a economic reset or revaluation of the dollar. That being said, our debt problems are so bad that a simple GDP factoring is really not going to get rid of it, especially because the problem is systemic.
Oh, well, okay. Global. Let's stop for 1 second.
Yeah.
Remember, it's all dots and tittles on a computer screen. And part of what Trump's doing is he's laying the groundwork for saying that a lot of this debt, if not all of this debt, is owed to shysters, is owed to people who got that position by corrupting our officials 100 years ago even, and a system that was based on frauds. Trump has actually, behind the scenes, made it clear he's going after the Federal Reserve, which is the Rothschilds, and after the IRS. And most of your listeners have heard me say this before. They probably didn't believe it, or they just didn't give it any weight. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. The IRS is no more federal than Federal Express. They are both Puerto Rican corporations.
Yep, incorporated in
And
the island of Puerto Rico. I think the transport minister, I think it's the transport or the agricultural minister of Puerto Rico is the most powerful man in the world. He doesn't even know it.
and one of the things that people don't realize, it moved to Puerto Rico from where? The Philippines.
Yeah.
That's where these were incorporated to begin with. So, and there's all sorts of interesting little things there in the laws, etc. Trump is laying the groundwork for outing a lot of this, and then remember, Trump's had his bankruptcies too, and he
Right.
still came out of it in one piece and came out in some ways better. Um, uh, he's getting ready to say, yeah, we're not paying that.
That's what I want to hear. I mean, people are like, well, Trump had his, bankruptcies and blah blah blah. Yeah, he had 4 bankruptcies, as people would know. He had 4 bankruptcies. But then I always follow up with the question: he has 4 bankruptcies. How many companies does he run?
He still owns Mar-a-Lago, and
Yeah,
so
and here's the funny thing: people don't realize this, but he runs 514 companies. 514 companies, and you only had 4 bankruptcies on four of those companies. I call that success.
well, and again, here's where if I'm hedging my bets, I hedge my bets. Is This is a really, I think, important point that I want to stick in the midst of all of this. Trump is not guaranteeing America is getting out of the hole or doing whatever. Trump isn't going to make you great again. He's not going to fix your situation. What he's doing is his efforts, his work, the people he's got around him are creating a environment that is less oppressive, less doom and gloom, where there's opportunity. But the action has to come from you. So if you're living in, if you're about to be here in this country, when all the chains are suddenly broken and loosed, and things are made possible, who's going to capitalize on that? Are you going to be one of the people to say, hey, I'm going to get my piece of the rock. I'm going to get my piece of America. I'm going to go fix my situation. If he's getting ready to kick MS-13 out of the country and all their players and throw people in jail and build a wall for real and stop a lot of this stuff, which I think you knew privately that my son's girlfriend got shot by an MS-13 member while she was at a bus stop here a couple months ago. And her and another girl, just collateral damage. Uh, these people are very, very, very dangerous, and they've had free roam of the streets. Trump is changing that, but it's up to your listeners to decide to participate or find a way to participate. It's an opportunity, not a guarantee, and we have to decide to step up and participate, to take a place in there, to own it. And if you don't, then you miss out, because it's not that Trump can fix the country all by himself. He can create an environment from his position that is less oppressive. Take some of the chocks out from the tires and let you get rolling again. But it's still up to each one of your listeners. And then how is it for you individually to do that? That's between you and God. Am I going to say put your money in cryptos or put your money in oil wells or put your money into a factory? Everybody's different. Everybody's skill sets are different. So you have to find what is the right thing for you to do. But I'm just telling you that something amazing is about to happen. I believe we've passed the point where it could kind of go either way at this point in time. I'm totally convinced that we are now going to go all the way on this thing. It's going to be an amazing next several years. And this is the time to jump in before the train has completely left the station. It's rolling. It's about to leave the station. Don't miss it.
Brother, and I'm with you 150%. I think the majority of the people that are listening to this program who are solutions based, solutions oriented, where there's no FUD, no fear, we're with you. Give us the tools and we'll finish the job, Mr. President. We'll build out an economy. We'll make it happen. Innovative new technologies are on the brink, and everything from cryptocurrencies, blockchain technologies. I mean, everything is about to burst forth. New energy technologies, new medical innovations. These things will all happen. These things will all happen. Why? Because the cabal, the deep state, is no longer at play. They're being hunted down. They're being neutered. They're being neutralized. And folks, this is time for us to get busy. And the W, thank you so much for this wonderful and very good and very enlightening news. And with that being said, folks, we're over and out. Take it away, El Cuco.
Don't forget, remember, say your prayers. We're not out of the woods completely yet. Pray for the president, pray for the country. That's the follow through. Yep. Everybody that plays golf knows you got to follow through on your shot. But we are on the right path, and go own a piece of it. And I look forward to hearing some good reports from everybody in your listenership that they have found a way to engage and participate in this and make our community stronger so we can be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So
Absolutely.
Appreciate the chance to talk to your audience. And I'm going to go get my Ford and go get my boat and get it moved here, bro.
Have fun, buddy. Take care. Thank you. Enjoy.
All right.
Take it easy.